Good day, everyone. Have you ever written poems or stories based on your personal experience? So today we are going to explore about the biographical approach in literary criticism. So for our objectives, explain biographical criticism and its application in literary analysis, appreciate the impact of an author's life on their work, and apply biographical criticism by linking details from the author's life to parts of the text. So, biographical criticism is the use of the author's philosophy and experience to understand and interpret the text. The biographical approach goes beyond just knowing the background of the author. The goal is to find and build a connection between the author and their output or their text. So, this approach is understanding an author's life that helps readers more thoroughly comprehend the work. So, author's philosophy and experience means when analyzing a text using the biographical approach is that we look at the beliefs, values, and their life experiences of the author. So these elements can provide deeper insights into the text. Beyond just knowing the background means that it is not enough to simply know where the author was born or what they did in their life. The biographical approach seeks a deeper understanding. However, a biographical critic must be careful not to take the biographical facts of a writer's life too far in criticizing the works of that writer. So, the biographical critic focuses on explicating the literary work by using the insight provided by knowledge of the author's life. So, not to overemphasize the biographical facts means that when analyzing literature through the biographical approach, it is important to avoid placing too much importance on the author's life details. While understanding an author's background can be helpful, but relying too much on these facts can lead to a narrow or biased interpretation. So, focusing on interpreting the literary work means that the primary task or goal of the biographical critic is to interpret the text itself. So, the critic uses the author's life experiences and insights to deepen their understanding of the work. But it should be focused only on the literary piece, not just the life of the author. So, biographical approach is like a tool that helps us to explain certain themes, characters, or motivations in the work. Critics doing biographical analysis carefully examine incidents in the lives of the authors and try to identify events, settings, objects, buildings, people, and etc. So, this type of criticism is difficult and has become less popular because even if the stories are based on real events and people, they often change a lot when turned into novels. So, when critics engage in biographical analysis, they closely study the lives of authors, looking at specific incidents and experiences. They try to see if certain events, places, objects, buildings, or people from the author's life are reflected in their literary works. The idea is that by understanding what happened in an author's life, we can gain deeper insights into their writing. So, this kind of analysis can be hard and it is not as popular anymore because one of the reasons is that even if the story is based on real events and people, the author often changes a lot when they write it as a novel. So they might mix up different experiences or add made up details to make the story better. So, the origin of the biographical approach in Renaissance period, the proponent is Samuel Johnson, entitled Lives of the Poets, who attempted to relate a writer's background and life to their works. So, In Renaissance period, Samuel Johnson's write a detailed accounts of poets' lives, hoping to show how their backgrounds influence their poetry. For Johnson, the life of the author was a crucial element in interpreting their works, suggesting a direct relationship between a writer's experiences and their creative output. In 19th century, Roland Barthes announced the death of authors in 1986, and in 20th century, it is still continued influence despite Barthes' challenge in biographical criticism. It has remained influential, and many critics continue to explore how an author's life could enhance an understanding of their works.
So now we are done discussing the biographical criticism, and you have already the idea on what is it all about. And now we are going to show you how to analyze the text using the biographical approach. How to analyze the text using biographical criticism. So basically, this method helps us to understand how an author's background influences their work. So, for us to better understand how we can identify or analyze the text using biographical criticism, there are 6 ideas on how to analyze it. So the first idea on how to analyze the text using biographical criticism is you need to research the author's life. It is the method of literary analysis for us to understand and interpret their works more deeply. So by connecting the text to the author's lives, readers can uncover layers of meaning that might not be immediately apparent through other forms of criticism. So this includes the birth and family background of the author. So you need to start by researching when and where the author was born, their family background, and early influences. So an author's life experiences often influenced by their writing or work. So by studying their biography, readers can identify the real idea or the real life inspirations behind certain aspects of their work, such as specific events, people, or places that may have shaped their narratives or work. Also, the education and career of the author. For us to analyze the text in biographical criticism, you need to investigate the author's education, early career, and significant life events that may have shaped their world view. So, an author's educational background can provide insights into the themes, the ideas, and also the references in their works. So, in addition to this, personal beliefs and relationship should also research because it is one of the factors that we can analyze biographical criticism in a text. And researching an author's personal beliefs and relationships helps us to understand their writing better. It shows us why they wrote certain things, what also what messages they wanted to convey, and also how their life experiences influence their work. So the second one is researching the historical and cultural context. So researching the historical and cultural context gives us insight into what was happening in the world when the author was alive. So for example, the author is dead. We can identify what is happening on that author when he was alive. Also, what ideas and events influenced them and why they wrote the way uh, the way they did. This background knowledge make it easier to grasp the themes, the symbols, also the messages in their work, leading to a more meaningful reading experience. So we need to consider the period of time it will uh, it will prevent us from judging their work by today's standards, it and also it helps us to see the text in a deeper, more meaningful way. Also, we need to consider the cultural influences because it helps us to appreciate different perspectives and avoid misunderstanding. So the number three is connections between life and work. Connections between author's life and their work helps us to understand how personal experiences, also the historical context and individual perspectives influence their writing. So, personal experiences can significantly influence an author's character development and plot choices. Knowing, knowing their experiences and background can explain why they wrote what they did and what their writing means. It also helps you to it also helps you to see how their personal life and the times they live in influence their stories and ideas. In analyzing text in biographical criticism, it includes analyzing the autobiographical elements. So these autobiographical elements, these identify any autobiographical elements in the text. These might include the characters, the settings, or events that reflects the author's life. So an author's life experiences often influence their writing. This helps in grasping the deeper meaning or critics embedded in the text. So, in addition to this, the personal symbols. Notice if there are specific symbols or motifs that could be connected to the author's personal life, and personal symbols can reflect the author's inner world, including their fears, their desires, and also unresolved conflicts back then. So, by analyzing these symbols, readers can gain a better understanding of the author's psychological state on how it influences their work. So the number four is the author's intention and messages. So researching the author's intentions helps us to understand why they wrote that work and what they were trying to say. This makes easier to grasp the deeper meanings in their work and appreciate their writing better. It also helps us to think critically about their ideas and see how they fit into a bigger picture. Set for example, Rizal's purpose of writing Nolime Tangere is to expose the social injustice and corruption of Spanish colonial rule in the Philippines. So, by researching Rizal's intentions, you learn that the novel is a critic of a colonial government and the abuses of the priests. So, this helps you understand why certain characters and events are portrayed the way they are, and how the novel aims to inspire social reform and national consciousness. So the number five is critical evaluation. So critical evaluation helps you read more thoughtfully and make better judgment about the information you are getting. One of these is the limitations. So beware of the limitations of the biographical approach. While the author's life can provide insights, the text should also stand independently. So examining limitations helps in evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of an author's work. It can also help in understanding how they overcame or were constrained by these limitations. So the next one is avoid overgeneralization. So avoid assuming that every aspect of the text directly correlates to the author's life. The text might also reflect broader societal issues or purely fictional elements. Take note that a person's life is multifaceted. So, overgeneralization can lead into deviating the interpretations of their work. Also, take note that literary works are often influenced by a wide range of factors, including historical, the social, and cultural context. So the next one is supporting evidence. Under this is using biographical sources. Support your analysis with evidence from biographies, letters, also diaries, and other documents related to the author. Some or most literary critics use biographical evidences to support interpretations and analysis of text. It helps them to construct more nuanced arguments about the connections between an author's life and their work. Correspondence with other writers can show literary influences. So, for us to better understand how to analyze a text using biographical criticism, our next reporter, Ms. Isel Heraldes, will give you an example.
Hi everyone, I'm Isel Jane Hiraldes. To continue our discussion, we will have an example on how to analyze the author's work. When using biographical criticism to analyze a literary work, you are essentially trying to understand how the author's life experiences influenced the writing. Let's have a relatable explanation of how this method works. We will use Jose Rizal's No Limitang Here, originally published in 1887, as an example. But before that, did you write down the 6 tips that Ms. Dani discussed? Because we will use those tips as a guide to analyze the author's work. Tips number 1. Research the author's life. Imagine, you are reading No Limitang Here and you want to know why Rizal wrote it. Start by learning about Rizal's background, about his family, their birth, education, career, and more. Jose Rizal was born in a time when the Philippines was controlled by Spain, and his family was wealthy but still suffered under Spanish rule. Rizal himself went to study in Europe, just like the novel's main character, Crisostomo Ibarra. This connection helps you see that Ibarra's story may have been inspired by Rizal's own experiences of returning to the Philippines after years abroad, full of hope for change. Tips number 2. Examine the historical and cultural context. To really understand No Limitang Here, you also need to look at what was happening during the time Rizal wrote it. In the late 1800s, the Philippines was suffering under the oppressive rule of the Spanish colonizer, especially the church. When you know this, the harsh portrayal of characters like Father Damaso becomes clearer. Rizal was not just making this up, he was writing about the real abuses of power he saw happening in his country. Tips number 3. Identify connections between life and work. Now, think about the characters and events in the novel. Some of them closely resemble people and events from Rizal's life. For example, Crisostomo Ibarra, the idealistic young man who returns to the Philippines, is very much like Rizal. Both men studied abroad and wanted to improve the conditions in their country. Maria Clara, the woman Ibarra loves. This believed to be based on Rizal's real-life love, Leonor Rivera. By understanding this connection, You can see that some of the emotions in the novel, like Ibarra's frustration and heartbreak, may reflect Rizal's own feelings. Tips number 4. Research the author's intentions and messages. Why did Rizal write No Limitang Here? He didn't just want to tell a story, he wanted to open the eyes of the Filipino people to the injustices around them. He wrote the novel to criticize the Spanish government and the Catholic Church for exploiting and mistreating the Filipino people. When you read the novel with this in mind, you see that characters like Sisa, who is driven mad by the loss of his sons, represent the suffering of ordinary Filipinos, and Ibarra's struggles mirror the frustrations of Filipinos who hope for reform but face constant oppression. Tips number 5. Critically evaluate the text. While Rizal's life and times certainly influenced No Limitang Here, it's important to remember that the novel also stands as a work of art on its own. Not every detail in the book corresponds directly to Rizal's life. For example, while Ibarra's experiences are similar to Rizal's, other characters like the scheming Doña Victorina may be purely fictional creations. Don't assume that every part of the story comes straight from Rizal's personal experiences. He also wrote to address broader social issues. Lastly, tips number 6. Support your analysis with evidence. To back up your analysis, you will want to look at sources like Rizal's letter and diaries. For example, Rizal's letter revealed his anger at the Spanish friars, which explains why Father Damaso is portrayed so negatively in the novel. You can also find evidence within the novel itself, when Father Damaso insults Ibarra and ruins his father's grave. This scene reflects the real-life abuses Filipinos suffered under Spanish rule. These details from the text and from Rizal's life work together to support your interpretation of the novel. By following these tips, you can start to see No Limitang Here not just as a story, but as a reflection of Rizal's life, his experiences, and his hopes for his country. Biographical criticism allows you to uncover the deeper meaning behind the text, linking it to the author's personal background and the world in which they live. And that's all. Thank you.